COVID-19, coronavirus. If you haven't heard that, like Cardi B voice of doing coronavirus, you should watch it because it's funny and I think about it every time. But all jokes aside, COVID-19 is a serious issue that has been affecting our whole community and has really been disproportionately impacting communities of color. So we hope that the end is near, but it likely is not, and there will likely be another aspect of this pandemic that happens later this year. So I wanted to go through all the lawyering, love that word, lawyering, that is going into the pandemic and what has been going on related to contracts, lawsuits, and trademarks. So first we're going to start with trademarks. So what is a trademark? I am going to read the definition from the USPTO because they're obviously the authority on this. In order to get a trademark, you have to file it in the United States. You have to file it with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So we're going to go straight to the source. A trademark is generally a word, phrase, symbol, or design, or a combination thereof that identifies and distinguishes the source of goods of one party from those of others. So, a trademark is stuff like Nike's Just Do It, that's a trademark. And I'm gonna do a video later that goes deeper into trademarks because there's this really interesting, it's really interesting to see how companies leverage trademarks, and especially Nike. They do a really interesting way of trademark protection and acquisition of trademark. Since COVID-19 and coronavirus happened, there has been obviously a spur of businesses that have come up and ideas that want to be trademarked. So for instance, DJ Nice's Quarantine Club. He trademarked, the day that blew up, he filed a trademark, which is great that people are protecting their IP. But there is also a lot of different, a lot of interesting trademarks that have been filed using the name COVID or coronavirus. So I'm just gonna read a few that were my favorite. There's actually been, I had the amount, but 247 for COVID and 50 for coronavirus at the time of this video. So a lot of trademarks filed. So some favorites are straight out of COVID times. If COVID gets deflected, it's harder to get infected. Don't be a COVID idiot, like COVID idiot. COVID, you didn't, like, oh no, you didn't. Spread love, not COVID. Love in the time of COVID-19. I'd love to know what they're doing with that trademark. Like, has anyone found love in the time of COVID-19, or is there just a bunch of divorces that were filed because people have been quarantined together? I don't know. Be covalent, like be vigilant. Yeah, I don't know if I like that one anymore. Maybe not. Warning, my ride is sicker than the coronavirus. So I'm guessing that's like detailing or custom car company. I don't know. And then lawyers, of course, there's going to be so much litigation that comes out of this. We'll talk about more how many cases have been filed as of the date of this video. But the last one that I thought was interesting was COVID Law Group. Like, they're just rebranding their whole, like, you know how whatever that thing is called, mesothelioma, I think that's what it's called. I should know. But there's tons and tons, asbestos basically. There's tons of law firms that's all they did. They still do. That's their whole practice. Personal injury and asbestos. And you haven't been able to put asbestos in construction in a really long time. So think about the impact of events like 9/11 and this COVID-19. It's really going to have an impact for years to come, and lawyers are going to be busy. Okay, So next we're going to talk about arrests. So while many people are using the coronavirus as an excuse to get out of jail, think Tekashi 6ix9ine, and I think there's been a lot of other people, but they're escaping me at the moment. They're using that as an excuse to get out of jail because jails are crowded, and that's a breeding ground for the coronavirus, and high-profile people have been able to use this as an excuse to get out. I do not think that normal, everyday criminals have been as successful, but of course these people are close to their term, or close to the end of their sentence, or they are they have an underlying health condition, so they've been released and just are on monitoring. While that was happening and people have been getting released or jailed, there also has been arrests related to coronavirus for either not following the stay-at-home orders or just general crimes that have been committed. I think crimes have been technically like lower, but there's been some interesting ones. So one is Saint Juan Antonio Davis, 35 years old, of Morrow, Georgia. He was charged with defrauding his employer by saying that he had the coronavirus. He wrote a letter saying he had the coronavirus, and the employer had to quarantine four of his fellow employees and shut down the company for cleaning. So a little background is like before he wrote this letter saying that he was coronavirus, the company had announced that, you know, people could get sick time, like that basically they were complying with the law in terms of you have the Family Act, that you have to give people time off if they have coronavirus. So he was like, oh, okay, I want some time off. Let me just say I have coronavirus. Well, baby, they got him. The feds came after him, and you do not want to mess with the feds. So he admitted that he didn't have the coronavirus once they called him out, because they investigated. They called the doctor, like, okay, does he have corona? Like they did due diligence, the feds and the Georgia Attorney General's office, and he did not have coronavirus. He just lied, straight lied. So he was arrested, and he's at $100,000 bail. So don't lie about having the coronavirus. Like, if you want a day off, like, take some sick time, use some personal time off, fake a cold. I mean, like, don't pick coronavirus. Like, come on, people. Okay, so the next case is, a lot of people heard about this. I thought this was just like a funny one. Is that a man was arrested 3 times in one day because he kept doing stuff, and they're like, okay, we were not holding people during the coronavirus because for petty crimes, and he's like, okay, I'll just keep being petty. And so he got arrested 3 times in one day, and that's just ridiculous. So imagine being a criminal defense lawyer in these 2 cases. One where your client obviously lied. There's evidence that he lied. There's really no defense to why he lied. And now you need to get him out of jail and defend him. Okay, so next we're going to talk about contracts, which is my area. So even contracts are severely impacted by coronavirus. So in a lot of contracts, we have something that's called, well, in almost every contract, it's like a boilerplate, which is a very common term I notice non-attorneys use, boilerplate. So boilerplate is like the general terms and conditions that are included in any contract, and force majeure is what it's called, is one of them. It's a clause that says circumstances that are beyond a party's control, usually defined as acts of God, and are an excuse for non-performance. And then at times it will also go further to give a party the right to terminate. And it usually, and this is very important, usually excludes payment obligations. So you can't say I can't pay because of coronavirus. Like, That is usually not included, but it may be included in certain contracts. It just depends. But I work in the tech space, and we always exclude payment obligations. So you still need to pay. You still got to pay. But you know, services, like if you can't, like if I'm a person who does professional services and I can't do it because of coronavirus, because we're supposed to be sheltering in place, we're not supposed to have contact with other people, then I have an excuse for my non-performance of the contract due to an act of God, which there's a debate of whether the pandemic actually equals an act of God, and we'll get into that a little bit. But that is how the performance is excused, and that is how a force majeure has come up in the context of coronavirus. So typically, kind of like I said, I think it's interesting to kind of list it out though. What's included in a force majeure clause is acts of God, such as severe acts of nature or weather events, including floods, fires, earthquakes, hurricanes, explosions, war, acts of terrorism, epidemics, which I noticed because I've done a review of a lot of contracts since the coronavirus hit. Not a lot of contracts include the word pandemic. A lot of them include epidemic. So there was a lot of debate on whether pandemic would be included in a force majeure clause. And it also includes acts of governmental authorities such as expropriation, condemnation, and changes in laws and regulations, strikes and labor disputes. That's a big one. And certain accidents. And the key, like we said, is economic hardship, aka failure to perform your payment obligations, is not enough to qualify as a force majeure event on its own. So yeah, like I said, you gotta pay. So first next we're gonna talk about a few contracts that included force majeure clauses. So one that came up is the production contracts. So in Hollywood, it has been severely impacted because they could not go on with filming and producing their shows or movies and releases of films. All of that was impacted. So what happens to the actors, the performers, and the people behind the camera in a case of a pandemic? Do they still get paid? So fortunately, Hollywood has a lot of employment groups and unions that protect or strive to protect the actors and those working behind the scenes. So SAG-AFTRA, they have been fighting the collective bargaining agreements, which are specific and situational. They all are different. So they have been working with the employers, which is like the studios or the networks, to get payment for their members. And Netflix and HBO are the only ones that we really know have continued to pay. And the series regulars for their impacted series. So they have continued to pay the actors. Other places have given them limited pay. But I learned that a lot of the contracts basically say they can stop paying you, and then when you resume filming, it can really be at any time. So if you have another project, like say, like I'm an actor, I wish, no, I'm kidding. I'm an actor and I was working on a specific series, and I have like a film that I'm filming after this series, and coronavirus hit, and my series was supposed to end, let's say now, in May, and then I'm supposed to start filming a film in July. Now that series, when they resume, because production now of this tape, the time of this video is now open. Now they're gonna say, okay, come back to work. We're ready to finish filming the TV series. I hope that finishes before I need to go film this movie, because my contract says that you can basically stop and start anytime. And I hope that, you know, certain actors and certain attorneys have worked with their clients on negotiating that out, and I'm sure that it's up to negotiation and they want to figure out how they can work within the confines of the contract. But that's a serious issue for a working actor. But The good thing about something like this is that it impacts everyone. So I think everyone is a little bit more understanding when it comes to stuff like that on a personal basis. Where people aren't as understanding is leases. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So we know that Cheesecake Factory had this whole thing where they wrote a letter to all their landlords like, we're not paying, sorry. We can't open, restaurants are closed, there's only takeout, like we don't have the money, we can't pay you. So Cheesecake Factory has said that they were withholding their rent. It's unprecedented times, all facts. But I don't know. There was no there was a lot of news about it when they said they weren't going to pay their rent, but there wasn't so much like follow through like what actually happened after they said they weren't going to pay their rent. We do know that they did get $200 million in investments after that. So hopefully they were able to get caught up on their rent because some people were sued for not paying their rent. Yeah. So another popular restaurant, I guess, coffee shop, Starbucks. Starbucks has 15,000 locations in the United States. Like, think about how much rent that is. They asked for a break in their rent. They didn't say they weren't going to pay. They just asked for like, can we have a break for the next 12 months? Because we have not been able to, open normally. I think they only had the drive-through and they might have had pickup. So we don't know obviously what happened with that. We don't, because I think at the time, Amazon packages here. At the time, we didn't know how long the virus was going to last. So when all these companies were asking for breaks, it's hard as a landlord, validly, that we don't know how long this is going to last. We still have to pay our mortgage. So I think we'll continue to see the impact of all these companies who said that they weren't going to pay rent and see what happened. Next, we're going to talk about lawsuits. So a lot of court hearings have been done through Zoom and WebEx. As of the date of this video, 1,350 lawsuits have been filed related to coronavirus. That is a lot. So California has the second most, New York has the most. So that makes sense because New York was really the epicenter. California is huge. So LA alone, I'm sure, has tons of lawsuits, but then the rest of the state, it's a given that we would be second. So, lawsuits that are happening, retail workers are suing their bosses for acting up during this time and subjecting them to poor conditions. College students are demanding their tuition money, which I think is valid. Like, they had to leave in the middle of the semester. They had to pack up all their stuff. Some of them don't have places to go. Like, not everyone can just go home to their parents. Like, international students, I think, were really impacted by that. Like, you can't just be like, okay, you have, and it was like 24 hours. They're like, you gotta go. Even though you paid for tuition, first of all, which tuition, okay, they have online classes. Okay, I get it. But room and board, like, you need to give me my money back for room and board. And I think it's a valid complaint that if I have to do my classes online and I signed up to go to an in-person school, I should kind of get some money for that. Like, that does make sense because I could have just gone to an online school. I know it's a pandemic and stuff, but they have enough money. Most of these schools, like, just give me a discount, a break, a refund, something. I think that's valid. And then also people were suing like ticket vendors and concerts and stuff like that, which is like, with lawsuits, I think this is the funniest thing that lawyers, I'm sure, we're on it. We're on it. Like, that's how we get paid. But people are really on it. Like, they sued Ticketmaster quick and in a hurry. They were like, wait, I can't go to a concert. It's just kind of funny where people's mind are at. Like, people were dying but people were quick to sue ticket vendors and concert venues and gyms and airlines. Like, I get it, you want your money, but that all happened very quickly. Very, very. But that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit more about the lawyering that is taking place during the coronavirus and what is to come. I will catch you next time. I hope you learned a lot. Please leave me feedback, and see you next time.